Hello and welcome to VistaTalks, interesting discussions with interesting people from all around the world. I'm your host for today, Simon Hodgkins. Today, really happy to be joined by Melanie O'Connor, Head of Marketing at BDO Ireland. Melanie is not only a commercial savvy and strategically minded marketing leader, she's also a former elite swimmer. I'm sure we're going to hear a little bit about that from Australia and Ireland, and was recently named Ireland's top 100 CMOs by the prestigious Business and Finance Media Group. With over a decade of experience in everything from business consulting, brand strategy, change management, and digital transformation, Melanie, I know, is passionate about innovating, challenging the status quo, and of course, driving sustainable business growth. Melanie, you're very welcome to the show today.
Thank you. I had to laugh when you said that because that's absolutely true.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get into it, Melanie, if it's okay with you. I mentioned you've had quite a diverse journey. You've been a CMO, you've worked in very different marketing, brand roles, etc. And of course, your journey from elite sports into marketing leadership today. Could you maybe share a little bit about your approach to marketing, maybe some of your philosophies?
Yeah, definitely. And I know it's quite broad. So sometimes I think, oh, I can almost write a book. But I think generally the way that I think it's really important to treat every business differently. I think that's number one, because I see so many people coming into different roles and they just think, oh, this worked in this business, then I'll come to this business and apply the same thing. I completely disagree. I think every business is different. So having a wide variety of tools in your toolkit to be able to apply the right tool for the right solution in the right context is very important. And taking the time to really understand the business that you're in before you start thinking of the way you're going to approach solving problems. I also believe if you're not clear on what the solution is, you don't have enough information on the problem. So usually the right answer I find in terms of, for example, if there's low brand awareness in the market, why is that the case? And if I don't have a clear answer in terms of how to address that problem, I know I need to find more information. I need to research more, because I think when you're really, really clear on what the real issue is, then the solution becomes clear as well. So I suppose there's sort of some of the practical applications that I try to apply. And I also think that marketing is a lot more strategic than I think general market knows. There's a lot of thinking involved in doing marketing very well. And so being an advocate for marketing, having a strategic voice in the organization, I think is something that I'm very passionate about, because we do link in very closely to business strategy. We are sort of the next step. So being able to be an advocate for, marketing, having a voice at a strategic level in the organization is really important. And not just because we're the voice of the customer, but because our skill set is very much focused on commercial growth, which obviously helps the bottom line of the business as well. So I think it's very important for marketing to have a voice at a strategic level in the organization. I think in the general market, there's not as wide a knowledge in terms of the strategic role that marketing plays within an organization. In context, especially in Ireland, we're definitely seen as, the pretty pictures and the nice words department, but there's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot of thinking that goes into doing marketing well. And there is a strategic consideration to marketing that looks at competitive advantage. How do we grow market share? Really linking commercial growth goals really to the business goals. So I'm definitely a passionate advocate for marketing having a voice at a strategic level in the organization, not just because we're the voice of the customer, but because of the skill set that marketers have in order to grow businesses, being able to be a part of those decisions, because we are the next step after business strategy. Like a marketing strategy leads up to what the business objectives are. So I think that's something I think is really important. And I think any business that really understands the value of that at a strategic level is going to be at a competitive advantage over those that don't.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And I like what you started off saying, which was it isn't sort of a one size fits all approach to marketing and taking everything you've learned in a previous company to the next company. Some of it will work. Some of it needs to be changed and adapted. I really like that, Melanie.
Yeah.
And I like how you were laughing when I was introducing you about the challenging the status quo. And maybe we'll get into that a little bit. But Also, that you mentioned, you need this sort of vast toolkit, if you like, of things that you
Yeah.
can work on. And I really liked what you're saying about aligning it to the business strategy.
Mm.
So important. Now, it's no surprise, given that sort of viewpoint and that starting point and the passion that obviously is coming through, that you were named one of Ireland's top 100 chief marketing officers. That's a great accolade. And as I was saying earlier, from business and finance, so it's pretty good. It's up there in terms of awards and recognition. What did that recognition mean to you? Was it great to be included in that? And does that reflect on maybe the way that you're approaching marketing and leadership today?
I think it's sort of validation for me in terms of the work that I've been putting in particular over the past few years. Like I've been really working hard to make sure my knowledge was not only just up to date, but really what's best practice in marketing globally. So I've really been, working very hard on that, and definitely enhancing my skills, especially at a strategic level in marketing. So for me, it just felt like, for whatever reason, validation, or sort of just, I've had to feel like, look, I've worked really hard, I've earned this. That's kind of what I felt like. And I do believe I've earned a spot in that top 100, because I know that my knowledge and my experience is not just up to date, but in some cases, especially in some businesses that I've been in Ireland, ahead of the curve. That
Yeah.
sounds hard for me to admit because I don't like talking myself up, but it
Well, I
is.
couldn't agree more. And listen, congratulations on being recognized for that. Truly deserved. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about brand transformation, if I can,
Yeah.
because I know you're no stranger to that at BDO in your role. And also, a lot of businesses out there, whether they're in Ireland or elsewhere on the planet, they're struggling with some of the key challenges and maybe not seeing some of the key opportunities that digital transformation can help them to maybe accelerate. Could you give us some thoughts on that?
Oh, there's probably two parts to that. There's the brand piece and then the digital transformation piece. Every single business that I've been in has needed work on the CRM for whatever reason. CRM seems to be one of those things that gets very clunky very quickly in organizations. It's one of the systems that is so important to have up to date, yet no one wants to keep it up to date. So, and there's no matter how much automation you put in place, there's always going to need to be some kind of data input, because where does that data come from? There's a lot that you can automate, but you can't automate everything, especially when you're looking at managing client relationships. So I think that for me has been a big one. I've seen that across the board, especially in Ireland. I think there's a journey in terms of understanding the role that digital marketing plays in terms of there's even though it's been around for years, for us marketers, we know how important it is, and we've known how important it is and the role it plays for years. I think in some ways there's still businesses that are catching up to that and understand the role that it plays. For example, there's a big shift in terms of, when you're thinking about being very performance driven and results driven in marketing, there's a traditional view that brand awareness is OOH, it's out of home, and then demand generation is your digital marketing. That's your Google ads and things like that. But what I actually found is that paid social is probably one of the best, most cost-effective brand awareness channels that you'll get. We doubled our brand awareness in 12 months on a I won't share exactly how much, but it was quite a small budget. Whereas you'd spend 4, 5, up to 10 times that on an OH campaign, and unlikely probably to get that same level of result. So I think understanding the role that digital plays, and I think the fact that we can be a lot more results orientated because you can measure things so much easier with digital, I think that's important. I also think the role that digital transformation plays is super important, but it's hard to do well. And there's the stat that says that 70% of digital transformation projects fail. I think it's because it's so easy to make those things so complicated. But if you keep things simple and you do the basics well, and you just think about what we need to achieve and you keep to your objectives, then, I found that I haven't had the instance where the same level of projects I've had. For example, we did quite a complex CRM migration last year, and by all accounts, it was extremely successful. So, just because that's the stat doesn't mean it necessarily needs to be. But I think, especially in Ireland, there's still businesses are on a journey to really unlock the value of both digital transformation, optimizing processes, using automation and AI to build into it, as well as unlocking the value of digital marketing as well as more traditional marketing channels.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Melanie. And obviously, there are two parts to that. There's the brand and the digital transformation,
Yeah.
and they're somewhat interlinked, of course. But I really was interested in what you said there about how paid social, if I heard you correctly, almost doubled your brand awareness, or did
It
double
did.
your brand awareness. I mean, that's incredible. Was that on traditional things like LinkedIn or Facebook or that kind of thing? Or
Because we're B2B, we primarily use LinkedIn targeting
interesting.
decision
Yeah.
makers. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great, isn't it? In terms of brand awareness, wow, that's incredible,
Yep.
and probably a
We
lot
had
more,
the
probably a lot
brand,
more targeted.
sorry, we had the research agency actually calling us up and saying, "What did you guys do? This is unusually positive." And we're like, "Okay."
No, it's
Um,
exceptional. It really is
yeah,
exceptional. Fantastic result to see such a growth in brand awareness. And I was just saying that probably a lot more targeted, approaching it that way from a paid social
yeah,
perspective.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Oh, definitely. And I think it's also important to understand not just that, but like you could do that and still not be successful. You've got to understand the psychology behind it as well, in terms of if brand awareness is low, there's no point talking about how different we are if they don't know who you are and what you do. It's too big a leap in their minds to kind of capture that, because they're thinking, well, hang on a second. Okay, that's great that you're really good at that, but hang on a second, who are you? What do you do? So it's a big leap to make. So we just went really back to basics. So where awareness is low in the market, people don't know who we are and what we do. Start there, consistent messaging, simple messaging, get known in the market. And then once we're known in the market, then we can start talking about how we're different. Because I think what it highlights as well is the importance of doing the research. Because so there's, especially in professional services, there's lots of opinions, which is great, and you get different perspectives. Ultimately, though, I always come back to, well, what does the numbers say? What does the data say? Because I can like this, you cannot like this, you can like this, I cannot like this, but that doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense in terms of the data. So I think it kind of cuts out the noise in terms of opinions, and like, well, I'm not sure if this is going to work or not, let's find out. Or is this the right message, or is this the right message? We don't know, let's find out how the clients respond to it. So I think it's easy to get caught up in and focusing internally, but you actually need to keep a very keen pulse on where the market is at.
Yeah, and because everybody has an opinion, I've
Yes,
noticed. So if everybody has an
especially in
opinion,
marketing, don't they? Yeah.
right? Yeah, everybody's got a marketing degree these days, it seems to
Yeah,
be. But having said that, it is really important to say, well, we've got to focus this and let's see what the market says, because it's so
correct.
important. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
Um, and the other thing I wanted to obviously just comment on is, obviously within BDO, you're communicating, whether it's in the Irish model, BDO worldwide has to communicate to very different markets, very different languages, very different cultures.
yeah.
And I think getting that right as well, I know, is really important for BDO around the world. Um, when it comes to growing, then whether it's internationally or in local markets, business growth is, I know you've said in the past that it's part of helping people to get better, for the individual capacity to get better.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily translate to just work harder, I'm sure.
No.
But I know that you're putting people maybe a little bit more at the center of the strategy here. Could you unpack that for us and maybe explain that a little bit better than I've put the question to you?
Don't worry at all. No, there's something I uncovered when back in my consulting days is, people would come to me and say, we've got a revenue problem or we've got a profitability problem. They would be the two biggest things that I would see. But then if you just look at, okay, you've got a revenue problem, we've solved the revenue problem. But actually what I've found is when you understand who the people are that are leading those companies, and you figure out what their strengths are, especially, and obviously, and for larger organizations, what the culture is of the company. When you understand that piece, that has to be a key driver in terms of whatever strategy you recommend. So I think there's a quote that says cultural eat strategy for breakfast. So in smaller organizations, it had to be reflective of who the leaders are. In larger organizations, it has to be reflective of what the culture is, and culture is created by people. So I think you can't just look at strategy in isolation. You can't just look at culture or people in isolation. One will inform the other. And I found that because I'd approached that in that way, is one of the key things that I would probably do differently. And that's what enabled me in companies that I went into, where I would actually find solutions to problems that other people couldn't. So, for example, there was a wealth management firm that I went into, and they were struggling with profitability. And I sat down with a managing partner. I unpacked his strengths. I worked with him. I wanted to understand his vision and where he wanted to go. And it became very, very clear that the approach that the previous marketing consultant they'd gotten in was not in alignment with who he is, how the business operates, what they do best. So I recommended a strategy, and they grew their profit margin 500% in 2 months. They closed more business in those 2 months than they had for the previous 12. And it was just by unlocking the capacity of what he already knew and what was already right in front of him. So I think that was just one case study, but over sort of years and years of years, I saw that sort of repeatedly. You've got to take into account who the people are as much as what the business is and what the goals are. And I found that's helped me create solutions where potentially others have gone in and haven't been able to.
Yeah, and I'm kind of half smiling as you're talking there, because it kind of brought me right back to your ability to maybe challenge the status quo, because you made it sound real simple.
Gets
And
me
I
in
did
trouble,
this,
but I do
and
have to smile because I can't help it.
yeah, but you kind of made it sound, well, I did this, and then we got a 500% increase, and it's brilliant. And but I know there's a lot of challenge had to happen there, and a lot
Yeah.
of maybe soul searching and discussions had to take place, right?
Um, me, the hardest thing is I'm not someone that will avoid the elephant in the room. I'm someone that's going to go, oh, there's an elephant right there. Now, depends. Some people, it really rubs some people the wrong way. I don't intend it to be that way. I think it's part of our Aussie culture. We kind of have this straightforward. We just call a spade a spade. And so it's just if I see something, I was like, oh no, that doesn't make sense. I'll say something rather than, try and. Sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. I'll be honest. But it's not in any other intention, is to show them what their blind spots, I suppose, is the best thing. If there's a blind spot there or something that like they're sort of dancing around it or they're not seeing it, or call it out, we'll have a discussion about it. Sometimes it gets heated, but then we get to a better solution at the end of it. So I do try to, when I go into organizations, even in the interview, I say, look, I'm not a yes person. If you want a yes person, I'm not the right person for this role. I do not mean to offend. I will just call out what I see. And if that's not what you're looking for, I'm not the right person. If you want status quo, if you want small incremental changes, you don't want things to change, you just, we're happy with our marketing department as it is, we don't want any big radical changes, then I am not the right person to lead this team. If you want things to change and you want significant improvements in performance and are willing to go on a journey of what that requires, then yes, I probably am the right person for this role. But yeah, so I think I do try and call it out in the beginning so then they know what they're getting in for. Because I'm not someone who's satisfied with doing okay when great and what's possible is just sitting there.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks, Melanie.
That's all right.
That's great. Thanks for clarifying. And
That's all right.
obviously, it brings me nicely onto the next thing I was going to ask you about, which is particularly in the world of AI, we've got black box
Yeah.
algorithms. We're not really sure what's happening there to some degree as marketers, but also marketing can sometimes be seen as a bit of an art and a science combined. How are you balancing that sort of creative innovation, that new way of thinking, that challenging way of making sure you call out that elephant, you make the positive changes? How are you balancing that creative innovation with the data-driven decision making
Yeah.
in your role, for example? How does it work?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because I did a speech on it, like I was talking at a conference, I think it was a year or so ago, about this. And it was, I really believe that you kind of get excellence in marketing at that real intersection between the two. It's kind of like it's a continuous feedback loop would be the probably way I'd describe it. You'd innovative ideas, and then you back them up with data, and so it's kind of it's a feedback loop between the two. Is the best way I describe it. You need that blue sky thinking, creativity, no holes barred, and at that stage of the process, there can be no, but what this or what that, or no, that's a stupid idea. You just throw all of it up on the wall and you see what sticks. And then from there, you kind of see, here's some potential ideas. And then you go do some research. And then you see what backs it, which of those ideas it backs up. And that'll inform, okay, based on this research, we found these key points. How will we translate that into a message that resonates for our audience? And then you go back to the creativity and the innovation. And what's a different way we might be able to get that message across that hasn't been done before, something like that. So it's a real feedback loop, I think, between the two. And the real beauty I've found with campaigns that I found really successful has been that real intersection of the two. So I think in terms of balancing the creative innovation as well as the data-driven decision-making, you need both. And it is, I think, a continuous feedback loop.
Yeah, I like that approach a lot. And obviously, we've been talking a lot here about some of the successes, but I want to ask you about some of the maybe challenges, or I'm not saying your mistakes, Melanie, but
I'm more than
because you work with various companies,
yeah.
and because of your experience and expertise, you must have come across big mistakes that companies have made when they're trying to transform their brand or improve their marketing or improve their campaigns. Has there been some big mistakes that spring to mind? You don't have to mention names of companies. And how can people maybe avoid some of those big mistakes?
Yeah, so I mean, and I'm the first one to admit when I'm wrong. Like everyone has strengths and weaknesses. I just have no ego about being wrong. I really don't mind. So for me, and then mistakes is how you learn. And I wouldn't even call it a mistake. It's just really on the path to find the right answer. It's an iteration of the next step in some ways. Some things I've seen is it's so easy for marketing departments, and this is referencing, past engagements that I've had. So easy in marketing, and it becomes a very busy department, and it's hard to get lost. It gets lost in the day-to-day in terms of they stop thinking about what we're trying to achieve, and they just start, oh, so busy, I've just got to get it out. They kind of churn and burn. And I've seen that once marketing departments get into that, it's very difficult to get them back out to that and start thinking strategically in terms of, instead of just put it out, is actually, what do you want this piece of content, for example, to achieve? How do we want it to position us? What's the output, or what do we want the potential audience to do next? Like, you've got the thinking that goes into marketing, which is 80-90% of it. So I've seen that happen. It's easy when you're busy to just get into, we've just got to get through it. But you miss a trick when you do that. And then I think being so concerned about how we're different in the market in terms of your brand before you've even got strong brand awareness. Like, I've seen that, and putting these big flashy campaigns out there and talk about this is how we're different, but it misses the mark because you're not meeting the market where it's at. So that's I've seen that as well. And I as any marketer, is any advertising that I see, I'm just thinking, oh, they did this well, they didn't do that well. I think I do this a little bit differently. I can see where they missed a mark here, or I can see when that's executed well. So I try and use even my trip on the train into the office as market research, or training my brain to see even just interpreting marketing messages. So not just looking at it like a consumer, looking at it like a marketer. So how did they approach that? And I wonder how they came to that conclusion. But I particularly like the ones that are very, very clever play on words. I think what was it? Oh, I can't remember. Anyway, there's a few examples I've got, but I can't remember any off the top of my head.
Do you know, I'm so glad you said that, because it makes me realize that I'm not the only one who's critiquing the advertising in the outside world. Because I often look at things and say, if only they'd have done that, I think that would have landed better, or that's brilliant. I could do something like that. So it's wonderful to hear that. Thanks for sharing that sort of balance between the creative and the data driven. And also about sharing this sort of mistakes that people are making as well when they're trying to transform their brands. It's really important. and very helpful in terms of what you're sharing with us today. I want to come back to humans if I can for a second, because marketers are bombarded with new shiny tools, AI being the one leading the charge right now. But there's always a new platform, a new tool, something else shiny to look at and work with. How are you approaching integrating new technologies, or maybe managing the marketing tech stack, if I can use that word,
Yeah.
without losing the importance of the human expertise, maybe at the center of things, that human touch, which is often the critical factor, as we were talking earlier, Melanie?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Start with, what are we trying to achieve? And then, like, what are we trying to achieve here? Because I think, for example, it's easy to go, oh, they're doing that. They've got this tech stack. Let's bring this in, or, oh, AI, it's the trend. We've got to make sure that we have everything that has AI in it. But you got to come back to, well, actually, what are we trying to achieve? What are our priorities at the moment? Because you can't do everything at once. What are our objectives? 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, more than that, where are we going? And then what are the key priorities that we can implement, around that? For us, we are a very busy marketing department. So productivity tools are very important. So looking at various different platforms for project management is a big one for me, because just if there's any way that we can take out any of the busyness, that we can get our team being more creative, I'm all for it. And AI plays a big role in that, in terms of, even just that initial piece. And we've got like AI within BDO that we use, even at the initial stage, for some of the more generic, I suppose, or what we will call transactional pieces that we need to do. So it kind of, then we're not wasting our creativity on thinking of a caption for a post, where it could be better used, for example, maybe coming up with a concept for our grad recruitment campaign. So we're doing that. We always tweak things, but it's just looking at, when you're integrating tech stack, what are you trying to achieve? What are your priorities? And then, what are our objectives? And it's got to align to those. Otherwise, it's a bright, shiny object, or it's a distraction.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think you were talking earlier, weren't you, about the sort of marketing, I call it the hamster wheel, where marketing can very easily become, okay, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, they need this, they need that. And you're right, because if you don't get off that hamster wheel or that treadmill, you're not looking at it creatively enough or strategically enough, and you're just sort of constantly busy. And I really like what you're saying there about the productivity tools being really important to manage that. And the more you can reduce sort of that time overhead, the more time you can focus on the things that to some degree really move the dial,
Move the needle.
Yeah.
It's so easy to, it's one of the, I don't know what other departments are like, but I know marketing is one of those departments. It's easy to get caught in the busyness, as opposed to, are we actually being productive? Are we actually moving the needle in the direction we want to go? Are we achieving what we've set out to achieve? Or we're just in the loop of getting stuff done for the sake of getting stuff done, which is
100%. Now, you're very good at achieving things in life, and I want to come back to this elite swimming, Australia, Ireland. Tell us a little bit about your background here, and also, did any of that translate into the way that you approach business today?
Well, yes, 100%. I used to be told for swimming that I was very cerebral. So it ends up working very well. I think a lot, so that works very well for marketing, because there's a lot of thinking involved in it. But more, I was the lead athlete. I represented Australia at, 3 World Swimming Championships. And then when I moved over here to Ireland in my later career, I started swimming just to keep fit. And then one thing led to another, and I ended up, doing a national record in the 50 meters butterfly, and being on the list of people heading for the 2016 Olympics. Unfortunately, I got an injury the year before the Olympics, and I just couldn't kick it. Being a bit older, it takes a lot longer to recover. So I had my stint, but for me, I suppose there's a quote for over here in Ireland, and it says that girls who play sport become women who lead. In terms of looking at gender equality and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure there's lads that play sport become men who lead and all that sort of thing. So not to play one side or the other. I think for me, it is what it teaches you in terms of resilience. in terms of not having to get it perfect. It's no such thing. And just, it's not, and I think what they call that growth mindset of you can get better through practice and effort, as opposed to giving up when you do it the first time and it doesn't work, right? I think what it teaches us, because we fail hundreds of times a day as athletes. So failure is not even a thing for us. It's just a stepping stone on the path to what's going to work. So I think that attitude, that growth mindset has definitely served me very well in my career. And if something's a setback, take it on the chin. What do I need to learn from this? And then you bounce back and you come back stronger.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And I've actually met quite a few medal winners from the swimming world and elite swimmers, and the amount of training that goes into it is unbelievable. My mind was open, and I know Dr. John Rudd very well, who's the sort of head coach for the Ireland team, and they've won some Olympic medals since. And
John Wood.
Fantastic.
John Rudd? Sorry, John Rudd. Was it John Wood? John Rudd?
John Rudd. Let me just make sure I'm getting it right, and I'll say that again because I don't want to get his name wrong.
Don't worry. I used to
Dr.
train
John Rudd. Yeah, John
Dr.
Rudd.
John Rudd. Yes.
Let me say that again because I don't want to mess him up because he'll kill me. I've met a lot of elite swimmers over the years, and I actually know Dr. John Rudd very well. He's the National Performance Director for the Irish Swimming and Diving, and they, Olympic medals they've won now. And I know he had some of that under his belt before he joined. And what he's done there with the athletes is unbelievable. My mind was open to just how difficult and challenging and dedicated the training is, and how much effort these athletes put into the swimming. It's a very hard discipline. So congratulations on all your success there, Melanie. I'm sure it certainly has helped you in business, because it's a tough discipline, and particularly to represent countries, it's no mean feat. So congratulations.
Thanks. You got to love it. You wouldn't do it if you didn't love it.
Absolutely. So let's move on a little bit. I want to ask you a bit about the changing landscape of marketing, because whether you're trying to communicate with a local market, with a market that speaks 4 different languages, 7 different languages, we're in a multicultural environment, we're in a multicultural world, where our communications have to resonate with different local sectors and markets and languages. But in that evolving landscape, and I'm going to put AI into that as well, whether it's social commerce, whether it's brand awareness, whether it's, marketing campaigns and emerging trends, are the things on your radar that you're focused on over the next year or so? Are the things that you're excited about in terms of where the landscape is going to and the new tools that are coming to the market? What are your thoughts on that, Melanie?
I think it's sort of just 2 general things, AI and sustainability. I mean, they're the 2 big things that are definitely on my radar. I'm very excited for the role AI is going to play in getting us out of all of the mundane, repeatable tasks that we have to do, and freeing us up as marketeers to be more creative. Because it's hard. I find I don't get ideas when I'm sitting behind my desk. I'm either walking, going for a swim on the weekend. I always have to have a notebook or my phone on me, because I get the ideas when I'm not at my desk doing the day-to-day, responding to emails, that kind of thing. So the more that we can free marketeers in particular up, and a lot of other professions as well, but I think marketeers in particular, we are creative animals and we are big thinkers. The more we can get out of just that mundane, the more we've got the potential to kind of come up with some new innovative ideas that can make a difference. And sustainability, I think sustainability is a big one for us marketeers as well, because I think we are a key driver of that change within organizations with our communication skills. So we're both internally and externally, and being the voice of the customer, the voice of the client. I think it's important for us to be that advocate for that within organizations, because anything that we say externally has to be true. We cannot, that's the biggest thing for me as a marketer. It has to be an authentic reflection of who the business is, how they perform, their behaviors, how they operate, how they communicate. Because I think anyone in the, consumers or B2B, they smell it a mile away. if you're inauthentic, or you're saying something externally but not delivering internally. So I think that extends to sustainability, because it's so easy to go jump on that bandwagon as well. But it has to be an authentic reflection of what the business is committed to. And I think as marketeers, being internal comms and external comms, we can be sort of almost like a gatekeeper or a sense checker on the messages that we're using, and keeping organizations accountable to deliver on what they say they're going to do.
Yeah, is it true to the brand? Is it authentic? And I'm a big believer in the statement, if it's not true, don't say it.
Don't say it. Yeah.
Because you're right, people spot it a mile off. It doesn't work. Don't do
No,
it.
it doesn't. If
And
it works
also,
short term, it's going to come back to haunt you.
yeah, 100% it will. And I liked what you're saying about doing things differently and having the notebook with you, because, whether it's getting out where there's people, whether it's getting into nature, whether it's, for me, walking around an art gallery, sometimes you do your most creative thinking when you're not stuck behind a keyboard, right?
100%. Yeah.
Really important. Yeah. Now, last couple of questions from me. You've obviously got your finger on the pulse of what's happening here, and you're also ahead of the curve. So what do you do to maybe keep ahead of industry changes, to make sure that you're doing what's required, that you're on top of these trends? Are there any habits or routines that you use to make sure that you're working with the innovative sort of thinking, or that you're at pace with where you need to be for your industry?
Constantly reading. So I have have you ever heard of a Remarkable tablet? The
I do.
Remarkables,
They're really, really good. Yeah.
really good. So for me, I love that because I'm always finding articles that I think are great, and oh, I'd love to read it, but I don't have time now. So I end up with all these tabs. Every marketer has this, all these tabs open on their laptop. So now what I do is I have it's a very practical thing, but I think this is just what I do to help stay up to date. And then obviously now I've got the Remarkable, I can actually just download them all to my Remarkable, and then I'll read them on the train on the way to work. So just finding the time to stay up to date is half the battle, because there's a lot of great information out there, but how do you find the time to digest it all? So that's one thing that's very practical that I use, is just get them off the tabs on my laptop and onto my Remarkable, and then on the train on the way to work, or when I'm having a coffee, I'll sit down and I'll read one. And I like on it as well because you can make notes. And then, I've only recently just finished my postgraduate diploma in sustainable global marketing with Chartered Institute of Marketing in the UK. And they are known as the global standard for, best gold standard for marketing professionals globally. So I try and find and seek out those continuous things, like those CPD opportunities as well, quite regularly. I've got like 3 courses on my list that I want to do already, and I've only just finished that. So I'm definitely a lifelong learner. I love to learn. So I think that comes in handy as well. I'm always looking for what's the next thing, or where do I have a bit of an information gap that I can fill. But I suppose a practical piece is, instead of just having the tabs on my laptop that I never read, download them to my Remarkable and take the time on the train or when I'm having a coffee to read through a couple of articles.
It's a great tip. Yeah, I can see people rushing out to grab a Remarkable right now. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you're a creative thinker, I think they're good, because you can just you're disconnected from the internet and stuff like that as
Yeah,
well.
there's less distraction, right?
I would go through ridiculous amounts of paper if I didn't have one of those. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Very good, very good. Lastly, and importantly, for marketing leaders or for people that are involved in communicating globally and locally, people who want to drive, I suppose, not just personal growth, but also the business growth, is there any advice you want to leave us with? Any parting thoughts for this episode?
I think the first thing is being aware that you want that. Human beings, our tendency is towards path of least resistance. So, it's what's comfortable, what's easy. If I can get away with doing this, why would I do something more? And so I think it's definitely a skill to train over time. And so you've got to find, what is that reward for me? Because we're carrot and the stick, it's how we're based. What's the reward for me for choosing something different? And it's also learning to unpack, what is the reward from getting uncomfortable? Because if you're in your comfort zone, you're not growing. And I think that is actually a warning sign. When I'm comfortable, I can do 100% of my job, no worries. I'm not stretched. I'm not needing to ask questions. That's when I start to go, something's not right. Because we as human beings, we either growing or we're dying. Businesses, they're either growing or they're dying. And so it's a case of, what do I need to do? I think you need to have a healthy balance between that. I think sometimes people think you can either be grateful for what you have or wanting more. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. So I think if you have a nice balance between, look, appreciating in your career, appreciating how far you've come and the knowledge you've already accumulated, and also being aware of where you want to go, I think that balance helps in terms of any growth, because we're never going to know it all. There's always going to be something more to learn, right? So if you've got that expectation that if I just know this next one thing, then I'll be fully complete as a marketer or whatever it is, I think that's an illusion. So it's trying to find that healthy balance between appreciating all the work you've done to get to now, and then also keeping that desire or that drive for continuous growth, whether that's for an individual or for a business. But I've always sort of thought, there's a quote that I love by Abraham Maslow, psychologist, I believe, and he said, and in any moment you've got two choices: to step forward into growth or to step back into safety. So we have that choice in every moment, and I think the more that we're conscious and present in terms of making those choices for ourselves, I think it ends up, it's comfortable isn't necessarily the same thing as being happy. So it's easy to feel comfortable, but really, what is it that really makes human beings happy? I think it comes from the journey of becoming everything that you're capable of becoming. But maybe that's just my opinion.
Well, that's some great advice and something for people maybe to think about. And thank you for sharing that, Melanie. You've certainly shared some great insights into the world of Melanie O'Connor, into the world of marketing and communications and brand and everything in between. And I really appreciate that. It brings us nicely, really, to the end of this episode. And I want to make sure that I thank everybody around the world who's watching or listening to this discussion, and also to ask them to join me for the next VistaTalks show, where once again I'm going to be joined by some more interesting people to talk about these interesting topics. But the only thing that is left for me to say is thank you, Melanie. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to me. I think I went on a little bit longer than we were supposed to, but I appreciate you letting me have the time.